Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to your Velvet Ashes Legacy podcast for the month of September. Denise Beck here, along with Sarah Hilkman. Hello, Sarah.
Hey, Denise.
And we are excited to have a conversation with you about this month's theme on the Velvet Ashes website of laughter.
Yes.
And honestly, we might be two of the most ill-equipped people to have this. We are not outwardly just boisterously funny people,
No.
but it's still an important topic.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think as we were talking about, in theme planning, preparing for this month, there are so many hard experiences in cross-cultural life. Like, I think, we just had the theme of complicated. Oh my goodness. So many of us could come up with the hard and complicated and heavy parts of cross-cultural life for sure. And I think sometimes the idea of laughter, it feels like, well, but that would dismiss the hard things, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I think this topic and conversation is so interesting because it gives us a moment to look into our hearts of how do we think about the funny things and the beauty, the joy, and all of that? Do we have room for both in our hearts?
Right. And I think we get so prepared for the hard, right? Everybody, the training, all the things we do is be ready for the very, very difficult things that sometimes we don't have eyes to see the fun, to see the humor, to laugh at ourselves. And the skill of being able to laugh at yourself is so needed.
It's so important. And I am terrible at it, honestly. I would really rather not laugh at myself. But I think you have to be able to, because when you go into another culture, suddenly you can't communicate. And all of these super simple things you can't figure out how to do. And it's so humbling. And
it's so humbling.
Yeah, I know I remember so often, I just want to feel competent. I just want to feel like I am actually an adult who knows how to do things. And I don't feel that. And so when you are able to laugh at yourself or find the humor in the moment, it just sort of takes that pressure and that stress off for a moment, at least. It might not even be lasting, but for just a moment, it kind of relieves that.
Oh, for real. And I'm just going through my mental card catalog in my head of all of those moments. There was one time we were having Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving is not one of those things that is celebrated anywhere outside of America, obviously. So we're all trying our best to recreate in Africa the fairs. And to this day, I don't know who did it, but there was a beautiful pumpkin pie. Everybody's bringing all their stuff and they're sitting there. And somebody mistook salt for sugar. And so this pumpkin pie was terrible. And whoever it was so embarrassed that not only did they not claim it, they left it there. Nobody ate it. And then nobody was owning up to it. So everybody's gathering all of their things to leave. And there's this one pie that's left. It's nobody is actually going to fess up and say they're the one. But how many of us have done that before? The packaging is different, right? I remember having to teach myself what are all of the different names for the exact ingredient that I need, because it doesn't and the packaging's so different. And so being able to laugh at yourself is absolutely necessary. And it's so much more helpful when you have funny people around you who can laugh with you, and it's not just you doing that. Yeah. I'm so grateful for those friends.
Yeah, it is so important. As you were telling that story, I was thinking of a time when my teammate and I kind of did a homestay in a village area in Southeast Asia where we were. And the person that we were staying with was like, oh, if you want to go bathe, there's a water pump out front, just in the front of their house.
Okay.
She gave us sarongs, cloth that you would wrap around. And we were like, okay, we don't know how to do this. This is a skill that we have not learned. So we just left our clothes on and put the sarong
on your clothes. You put the sarong on top of your clothes?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because we're just I don't know how to do this. And all of these kids who were, around came and were watching us and just were like
Oh my
laughing and
word.
pointing. And
You made their day. You were
well,
the
and
story they were telling all
yes.
night.
Well, the story did travel through the entire area. People were like, we heard about your bathing experience. And in the moment, I was just like, I feel so dumb. I
So
can't figure this out. And people are laughing and talking, and I should know how to do this. And it was one of those moments that if you can stop and laugh at yourself and also just be like, actually, we've never learned this. Would you teach us how to bathe
right,
with a
right.
sarong? And neither my teammate nor I were able to do that. We were just embarrassed about it, and then they had to find like a neighbor's enclosed bathroom for us to
For
bathe.
you. The special girls need help. Give them a
Yes,
bathroom.
yes, and it helps when people have had experience with foreigners and are like, oh, okay, we might need to give some instruction or something. And they were kind of like, how do you not know how to do this? But it was one of those moments when I look back and it's like, I wish I would have laughed at myself. I wish that I could have just seen the humor in the situation and just let it go, like just relax. And that's what laughter
Yeah.
does for us, right? Like it just helps us let go of that stress and pressure.
Okay, so Train International, MTI, all of you little sending orgs that train, include a section on how to laugh because
Mm,
you're going to need it. And then if you have teammates that also know how to laugh, so one of my stories that seriously, I probably tell it once a year when we're together, and our teammate, he just brought it up again. I can't even remember if I have told this already in one of our podcasts because I feel like it's just a story that follows me wherever I go.
it's a classic.
It's a classic. So we were driving, picture with me the roads in Uganda, right? Potholes, you are maneuvering. So you're not a great driver, or maybe you are a great driver, but it feels like you're getting tossed all over. For some reason, I was riding with my teammates. And so they're sitting in the front, husband and wife, and I'm in the back seat, and my husband is in a car behind us. I cannot remember why this ended up this way. And I am just like, my teammate Eddie is the absolute worst driver I've ever. And I'm just like sitting here going like, how get me out of this car. So I'm like texting my husband going, get me out of this car. He is the worst driver I have ever been riding with in my entire life. And I hit send and I watch Eddie's phone light up in the
Oh
front
no.
seat. And I had accidentally texted it to Eddie, the driver, saying, how bad, get me out of here. Eddie's a horrible driver. And I'm sitting there thinking, how can I grab his phone and delete this message? And then I just like, nope, I'm going to own it. And Eddie's going to see this message. And I remember we walk into where we get, and he's like lifting up his phone and he's like, and he goes, Denise. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Eddie. It's like, I just had to own it. But we
Right.
rolled on the ground laughing so hard about that. And he still brings it up to this day, just like I was embarrassed, but yet it was one of those things that we just bring up and laugh about. So learning how to laugh and then having the grace to laugh at your teammates when they
Mm-hmm.
do silly stuff and oh my gosh, letting stuff roll off of you. What a skill to have. I'm
Oh,
so
for sure.
thankful that he didn't look at that and go like, are you kidding me? And get so angry and bent out of shape. And then the rest of our trip together was that he's just like laughing at me and with me. And then it becomes this endearing story that we joke each other with 10 years later. But
Right.
laughter is such a huge part of being able to make it in really hard places. And
Yeah.
Sarah, that reminds me of a story. So you and I, early on in Velvet Ash's Legacy podcast, were doing research on legacy stories. And
Right.
when this theme of laughter came up, we were like, how do we tell how important laughter is? And we started trying to think about these legacy stories. And unfortunately, that's not what a lot of people write about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this one story came to our mind, and it has to do with Helen Roosevelt. And I actually, before we recorded, I got back on this morning and just re-listened to it, and just it brought me such joy to remember the story. Do you want to start telling that a little bit? Do you remember the story?
Yeah. So if you want to go back and listen, this is episode number 5 of the Velvet Ashes Legacy podcast. But Helen Roseveare had been through medical training as a doctor, and she had come to know the Lord and was kind of going through this process of discerning what the Lord had for her. And she had actually gone to WEC was the name of the organization, right? And
Mm-hmm.
she had been caring for someone, like giving medical care to someone who had long time been on the field, and then she stayed on to help there and kind of discern what God had for her. And I remember she was not, I think she claimed this herself. She was not super skilled in like household chores
Right.
and those
Right.
types of things.
Yeah, she was brought up in a really, more affluent way where she didn't have to learn how to clean or do dishes or cook. And so she finds herself here where that's the skill that's being called upon. And so she's walking into a room with a tray of coffee, I think. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
the leadership. And at this point, I think she's like, she wants to be sent out somewhere. And so she's hoping that that happens. And she gets close to the door and she hears all of the leadership of WEC talking. And she realizes it's about her. And they're talking about how incompetent she is and how difficult she is and how she can't even clean and she can't do anything. And how in the world could we send her somewhere? And
Right.
so she like stops and she's like, I am not walking into this room. And so she grabs somebody else and switches chores with them. She's like, okay, I'm going to go outside and hang the wet laundry on the line. You take this coffee into this room. I don't want to go in there when they're talking about me like that. And so she goes outside and she begins to wrestle with a wet sheet, trying to hang it on the line, right? Anybody had to do that, you understand. The wind's blowing, it's suctioning to you, you're trying to maneuver.
Sheets are tough.
Sheets are tough. And so she's like trying to get it all done. And so imagine she's outside at war with this wet sheet. And the windows that she is wrestling outside of happen to be the windows right outside of the room where the coffee was being delivered and the people were talking about how incompetent she is. And so not only now it's dinner and a show, they
Right.
are talking about her and watching it play out in front of her. And she, thinks she gets it up there. She turns around only to find out that it has blown off into the mud. And so the leadership are watching this happen. And she's just like pauses and she's mentally thinking, I am going to have to not only pick this up, but I'm going to have to rewash all of this laundry. It's enough to cause someone to stomp away or just give up altogether. But that is not what she does. Helen Roseveare absolutely starts rolling with laughter and she cannot stop herself. It's uncontrollable. I don't know if she lays on the ground and just laughs in defeat, but she is visibly shaking with
Right.
laughter. And that is what they see on the inside of the room with their coffee. And it absolutely changes their perspective of her because they say, if this lady can laugh at this, she
Right.
absolutely has what it takes to be on the field. And so when I heard that, read that, listened to it, I was like, laughter is an important part of our life overseas. It's an important part of learning how to deal with struggles. It's an important part of learning how to um, laugh at yourself and not take yourself too seriously. I mean, literally, Sarah, when we enter a field, you mentioned it, we don't feel competent. We are back in infancy stages. And if we cannot laugh at that about ourselves, we are really going to struggle.
Yeah. Well, and laughter is so good for like it's good for us mentally and physically when we laugh like it brings more oxygen to our organs and it gets those good endorphins going to our brain and I was reading just a little bit because I was thinking like there's something about when you laugh with someone else it that connects you, it bonds you.
Yes.
And so it is so important for like relationally and yeah, just there's plenty of stress in cross-cultural life. And so having healthy ways to relieve that are so important.
So important. So our struggle was real though when we were trying to find these stories. We have done a lot of research. We have been doing this podcast. We're on season 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to bring you a legacy story. And we have researched, we have listened, we have walked into a lot of women's stories, and not very often is there a story or a chapter that pops out of us that reminds us of laughter. Not that they're not there, but it's definitely a harder search to find. So, one of the things that we have also done here at Velvet Ashes is we curate stories. We
Mm-hmm.
hold the stories of the women that serve cross culturally, whether that's through our writers team that bring you blogs that we have done for the last 10 years, or whether it's through the book that we put out a couple of years ago called Yet We Still Hope, which
Mm-hmm.
is full of kind of some of the harder things that we wanted to hold for people, those stories. And so we have decided we want to be a place that also holds the laughter and the stories
Mm-hmm.
that are funny. So, Sarah, why don't you talk about our next project that we're excited about?
Yeah, so it was such a joy to get to have this space, like you said, like, hold these stories for women in Yet We Still Hope. And we want to do that. Like there's something so powerful about being able to read these stories and feel seen and understood, to know that you are not alone in the experiences that you are having. And I think sometimes, we can get so focused on our own life and our own, struggles and the things that are happening. And having those places where we can turn and be reminded, whether it's telling the funny stories or watching a comedian or a YouTube channel that reminds us, like, okay, I can laugh, this is funny. And so in some ways we want our next book project to be that, a container, a space to hold the funny stories. I was talking with someone a couple of months ago just kind of about this book project, and we were acknowledging, there are so many hard things about this life, but actually there are some really funny and good things too. And so this is an opportunity to acknowledge that together, to say, let's just tell the stories of the crazy things that happen when we travel, or the ways, like you and I have shared these stories of being able to laugh at ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, just the ways that laughter can remind us to hold on to hope. Because there is something
Absolutely.
when that joy just can bubble up as we laugh, as we relax, as our body relaxes, as we have these connections with people. It comes back to, in a lot of ways, the title of our last book of Yet We Still Hope. Even in the midst of all of this hard, there is good. And
Yeah.
so we want to hang on to that together and remind one another of that together.
So, our hope is, as we aim to highlight legacy stories here on the podcast, is that we will curate a book of laughter stories, a book of stories that make you laugh, so that maybe you're in a season where you're not finding things very funny yourself, and this sits on your shelf and you are pulling it out.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be a place that resources you well. And so in this month of September, we are opening submissions for our latest book. Those submissions are going to be opening on September 15th. And Sarah, tell a little bit about what that process will be like. If you're interested, if you're listening to this and some funny stories are popping up, would you give a little bit of information about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to have, 40 or 50 stories in this new book from women who are on the field or have served on the field. And so we will have sort of a submission packet for you, and more information will be coming out this month about that. With all the instructions that you need to craft your story, share your story, write your story, and submit it. And you can always write to us at our book email, which is book@velvetashes.com, and we'll have that in the show notes as well. If you have questions, or if we can help you as you craft your story and put it together. But we'll also have different topics and ideas. Obviously, you can take it where you want and really see what you might want to share. But yeah, just how has laughter helped you navigate hard situations, or what have you learned through maybe your cultural misunderstandings? How has laughter and humor helped you connect with neighbors or people in those local cultures. So look through those topics and spend some time thinking back, what stories would you want to tell that could be an encouragement to people as they hold on to hope.
So in the submission packet, it's going to tell you about the word count. It's going to tell you about
Yep.
the timeline. So we've got a set date that we want to receive those submissions by, and then our team is going to cull through those and begin to put together a book that we hope to bring to you in 2025. So
Mm-hmm.
we're so excited about this opportunity to invite more people into the Velvet Ashes community and to laugh together.
Yeah.
Um, so if you have any questions, reach out to us. We realize that this podcast will live longer than the submission window. So you
Right.
might be listening to this and the book's already out. Well, yay for you. You don't have to wait. Um, but one of the things that we are currently doing in our Velvet Ashes community that talks about laughter, that incorporates laughter, has to do on our social media page. And so every week we do a Friday Funny, and one of our Velvet Ashes members, Katelyn, is in charge of that. And it is a way for you to every week just laugh with us as we look for those things that unite us as a community that only we might find as funny. And so we've invited Katelyn to have a little bit of a conversation with us and open up the door to how do we incorporate laughter into our Velvet Ashes social media. So we hope that you will enjoy the Velvet Ashes interview we have with Katelyn Comer. Well, we are so excited to be here today, Sarah and I, with Katelyn Comer. Katelyn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Katelyn, I want to introduce you a little bit to the community because I don't want to miss this opportunity to just get to know you a little bit. But you are a part of our Velvet Ashes volunteer team. And one of the best parts of our social media is to you because it's our Friday Funny. So tell us a little bit about, well, first, before we even get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're serving at.
Yeah, so me and my husband and our two kids serve on a tiny island called St. Kitts. St. Kitts and Nevis are a federation in the Caribbean. And we work with a church that's mostly veterinary students, and so a lot of American students who live on the island. And we work in recovery ministry as well. So we work with an organization called Celebrate Recovery, both in the community and in the prison as well.
Okay, so I had no idea that you worked with veterinary students or that there were a lot of veterinary students there. That's so fun.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah, how long has Katelyn been a part of our team? Do you remember?
Oh, wow. Yeah. As long as I have been on staff, I'm pretty sure. Caitlin, yeah, do you remember? So probably 5 years ish.
Yeah, that sounds about right. 5 or 6 years. Yeah.
Katelyn, do you remember when you came on the volunteer team? What was your role?
Yep. I was serving on Thursdays on Instagram, just checking posts. And I think I posted a link to a blog and commenting, things like that. Yeah.
Our Instagram has changed so much over the years, which is super
Yeah.
fun as, yeah, different people have had different roles and what we have shared has shifted. Just
Yeah.
trying to, yeah, meet the needs of people in different ways.
So if you're listening and you don't follow us on Instagram, you've got to get over there. It's so fun. We post snippets of the blogs that women write all over the
Mhm.
world. We post updates and prayer prompts every week. We have a team that just prays for all of those that come in. And we also have women on our volunteer team who they're just interacting with all of you that follow our social media. They're looking at your posts, they're commenting on them. And so you are not just a name on a screen on
Mhm.
the Velvet Ashes Instagram. You're actually somebody that we want to get to know and interact with. And then on Fridays, we want to laugh a little bit. And so at some point, Katelyn transitioned over into owning our Friday funnies. And so, um, so the theme this month is laughter, and every week we want to laugh at Velvet Ashes, and there's so many different things. Katelyn, actually, before we hopped on, you were talking about something that you almost just have to laugh about that happened to you today.
Yes. Yes, we got a call from the owner of the building where our church meets, and he said that it was flooding. Water had been turned off. I'm sure many people can relate to living in places where that happens. And a sink had been attempted to be turned on and left that way. And so it ended up overflowing and flooding from upstairs into downstairs. And it's just island life craziness. Yeah,
And
if you
not
don't laugh
probably
about it, it'll drive you crazy.
right. Maybe
Yeah.
not funny at the time, but it's one of those things that you're like, we're hoping we laugh about this someday.
Yes,
Right.
yes, for
For
sure.
sure. Okay, so our Friday funnies are something that we get the most interaction out. And I would love to just talk a little bit. Could we just go there a little bit? Why do you think this resonates so much with our community?
Yeah, I mean, we attempt to find posts and videos that are either biblical humor or like travel humor, expat humor. So I think, anytime we see bits of our own life or beliefs or ways of doing things sort of reflected, right, then we can connect and relate to those things in a different way and interact with them in a different way than someone who doesn't spend a large amount of time in an airport or who maybe doesn't, right, hasn't read some of those really silly little bits in the Bible that are really humorous and funny. But I think that we just all love to laugh. God made us that way, right? He made us in his image, and I think he has a sense of humor. And
Absolutely.
I think that's why it resonates so much with us.
What I love about it too is I feel like it really helps you to feel like you belong to community, because if you have not served cross culturally and you're reading some of these things, you won't think they're funny, honestly. But the funny thing is that it binds us all together. It's like I feel so seen right now
Yeah.
because of that. I was wondering, Sarah, I'm putting you on the spot, and so like, what do you have a funny that sticks out to you, or any type of them that
Wow.
are your favorite?
So we've done this a couple of times where you use like the sort of auto prompt on your
Yeah.
phone to finish the sentence. So here's a little thing about me. I don't laugh out loud super often. Like it takes a lot for me to actually laugh out loud. I laugh in my heart a lot, but
Yeah.
to actually laugh out loud. But those are one of the things that I actually laugh out loud. Just seeing the sentences that people put out, and then like it kind of there's kind of themes, and yeah,
Uh-huh.
those are super fun. We've done them a couple of times, and those always get me.
Yeah, I love those. It's interesting to see. You can tell when like everyone in the comments works in some type of ministry because all of their responses, right, those auto prompts have to do with ministry or church or I'll be home when or right.
Right, yeah, or some
Yes.
meeting, or the ones
Yes.
also that make me laugh are something about naps, like
Yes. I love those.
I think I'm trying to look. So there was one, I remember you posted one thing, and we generally know about the amount of likes we usually will get or the comments. And all of a sudden, I'm just like, are you guys seeing this? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening? Which post was that?
That was the one. It was a play on a worship song, and I'm trying to remember what worship
Yes.
song it was. Um,
From you turn graves into gardens, or
it was in Graves into Gardens. And so it was like, what other things could we include in that song that God turns from one thing into another thing? And I think it kind of went viral. Like all these
yeah.
people that don't follow Velvet Ashes were
yes.
commenting on it and sharing it. And I mean, I took that from someone else. Like that, I find all my
Oh,
things, right?
right, right. Yes, we just are sharing things that, but yeah, it really resonated. And we don't understand the algorithms and how the Instagram, river works and
Right.
how it gets into some, but that got into something. And we're just like, I'm just like, what is going on? Who are these people? And but that one shared the joy way outside of our Velvet Ashes
Yeah.
community that time. I find that the ones that are funny absolutely like have to deal with travel. Like there was one, the cardboard sign one. It's like you don't have to get to the airport 3 hours
Yeah.
early, and it's like unless it's a fun airport. And so there's
Right.
just like, oh yeah, we totally get that. We know which ones are the fun airports and which ones we can
Yeah.
slide in right at the last minute. And so yes,
Absolutely.
these things that like really resonate. I also find the language ones, like
Mm,
Yes.
when they have to
mhm.
do with learning a language or our fumblings with speaking a different
Yes.
language, you just like those are things not everybody gets, but they seem
No.
to really resonate.
Yeah, I really loved the Tower of Babel one. And it kind of said that, like, because of these guys, now I have to spend this time learning a new language, you know?
Yes,
Right.
thanks so much. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that, guys.
Right.
You changed the life of global workers forever. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes. So what is your process like when you are looking for those funnies?
Well, yeah, I mean, thanks to Instagram's algorithm, I guess. Almost all of the things I see on Instagram are biblical humor or travel humor, pretty much. But just as I'm doing my own scrolling social media time throughout the week, anytime I see something that I think would be good for Velvet Ashes, I just send a message to Velvet Ashes from my account. And I'm sorry, you guys are probably always getting
Oh, it's
notifications,
great. We love it.
messages, but so anything that's funny I think would be relatable to our community or that people would enjoy, I just sort of send over there. So on Friday mornings, I have a little alarm set I get on, and try to just kind of go back through them, make sure I think they're still funny and appropriate for the community and everything. And then I try to pick at least one good one to just share, and then the rest we put in the stories, all the videos and that type of content. So
Hmm.
and we have kind of two ways to interact with funny things on Fridays. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of how Instagram has changed, over time of like when the addition of stories instead of now just instead of a post, there's the stories that you interact with. And
Yes.
so in general, is humor a part of your daily life or is it a struggle?
I would say that usually it is. Obviously, I go through seasons like everybody where it's a little bit harder to see what's funny in the situation. Um, but humor is definitely a huge way that I've learned to cope with stress and cope
Mm.
with ridiculous situations. In St. Kitts, they call it stupidness. So when stupidness is happening, right, if we can laugh about it in some way, it helps. I've also found that humor really helps bond me with local people,
Mm,
especially if I can laugh at myself. That's one of the number one way I can build connections and relationships in public. We do have a vet school and a medical school on the island. We have a lot of American expats who maybe don't see a lot of humor in their struggles to learn to live overseas. And so, unfortunately, I think a lot of times local people um, just see Americans or expats as being very angry. So when we can laugh at
mm.
ourselves and make fun of the stuff we don't get. Even just yesterday, I was at the cable company. We moved. I did change internet stuff, and I had to let them know that a cable had fallen down during a storm last week. And I thought it was an electric cable. I had called the electric company, but then our neighbor said, no, electric lines are high on the pole and cable lines are low on the pole. So, the lady I was interacting with didn't seem to be in a great mood. So I just started joking about like, hey, this cable's down. And I mean, I've lived here almost 8 years and I had never known that, and then they started laughing with me and maybe at me. I don't know. But
Yes.
it was a great way to sort of break that tension. And it
Mhm.
makes a big difference in daily life here for sure.
It really does. It really does. And I think that one of the things I was wrestling with is humor is one of those things that's done in community, right? So
Mhm.
you mentioned like you don't usually laugh out loud, right? And so, but finding that way to just laugh in community with people, and I feel like for those people that maybe are serving alone or in more remote areas, what a big challenge to incorporate humor into your into
Mm.
your life and your rhythms and be reminded of that. And I think about this Instagram, like you just don't know how many times you are that person, you are the
Mhm.
injection of humor into their life, and that the way that that ministers to them. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so thank you so much for using that tool. It seems like such a small thing, right? It seems like, does this really matter? But how many times has somebody grabbed their phone at the end of a day and they're frustrated and alone and they see that post and they are laughing out loud to themselves,
Mhm.
and the Lord is using that in their life to be something to laugh at and encourage you to not take yourself too seriously, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I hope so. It's so much fun to get to post it And I love when people will like send a comment or even just like react to the videos and things and just let me know that like they did appreciate it and did enjoy it or comment on those posts. It makes me I feel like I'm doing something useful, and it's really fun. It's really nice.
Yes. So do you ever get people that send them to you? Like
Yes, yes. I have one sweet velvet ashes friend who sends them to me regularly, weekly, and I try to always include them. They're always funny. She does a great job. And then I've had different people. I think you've both sent me things at different times that other people here and there. I put in last Friday's post my Instagram account so that people can send me more things. If they send it to Velvet Ashes, I might miss it because I'm not on there every day and other people check the messages, right? But if anyone wants to go back to that post from this past Friday, it's the one about Judas, not Judas Iscariot. And he probably introduces himself that way
all
all
the
the
time.
time. Yeah. But my Instagram's in there, and I would love to get videos that people think are funny. I would love to share those and include those. And that's all the
Well,
funnies.
and if it's okay with you, we could include that information in the show notes to this
Mhm.
show so that if
Yeah.
you're listening to this and you come across a lot of funny stuff, send it to Katelyn. We would
Yes.
love to include that in our Friday funnies.
Do you ladies have other places or other things that you go to if you're like, I just need to laugh, like a YouTube channel or an account or anything like that?
I really love an account called The Bible is Funny, and I do share a lot of their posts. And in fact, they made a game out of a lot of their posts that you can buy, and
Oh,
someone bought it for us, and we've
Are
been
you
playing
kidding?
with it. It's like apples to apples, but with
oh yes.
Bible verses that are like out of context. So
Like
you get like
really
a
obscure.
absolutely like very obscure Bible verses, and it says the reference in the translation, and you can check them, and they're all accurate. But it's hilarious. So like playing funny games like that, and then I really love just comedians, especially Christian comedians, and so
Hmm.
going to their YouTubes or listening to their podcasts, that kind of thing. That's the way I get a lot of laughs throughout the week.
I so agree. I find there's seasons like when it's super heavy, or my husband and I have had a rough day, and in the evening it's just like, what can we do that's funny? What can we
Yeah.
watch that's funny? What can we? And sometimes it's like a couple of nights ago, I know people have lots of different opinions about having your phone in bed with you or whatever, but we were both
Yeah.
sitting up and we were sending each other just memes, and we were
Yeah.
crying, we were laughing so hard, just
Oh, I love it.
like, and it was like, I realized we're not like together, like interacting together, but we are, because we like, I couldn't wait for him to get the one that I was just sending to him, and we're just like,
Yeah.
and it's just like, how can we incorporate rhythms that just lighten the load? It's just
Mhm.
like,
Yes.
take the mental stress off and let's just laugh for a bit. And whether that's a YouTube channel or a funny movie or a comedian, we're so with you on that. We love it when one of our favorite comedians will, like, there's a new, show out, and we get to,
Yes.
like, watch it. And um yeah, and I don't know, my family group chat has become one of the funniest places. And I feel like my kids are just hysterical, and I love just sitting back and reading all the random things that they do now as little young
Yes.
adults. But I don't know. I feel like this is just a topic that people don't talk about. One of
Mm.
the things that we recognized as we were, addressing this topic of laughter is, it feels a little bit like suffering and grief are things we absolutely know how to talk about, because when we
Mhm.
signed up for this life, that was part of it. But laughter feels like something we don't, is it okay to laugh? Is it okay to be
Yeah.
funny? And, there's a lot less enthusiasm to understand how to talk about that and to acknowledge there's some really funny things about this life. There's some really funny things about the culture that we live in, like, and it's okay to have joy and laughter, and that is just as much a fruit of the Spirit that the Lord wants of us
Yes.
as understanding this life will have suffering,
Yeah.
and so I'm so thankful that we are taking this month to just dive into laughter. I'm so thankful for you, Katelyn, and for what you bring to our community every week. And so I just want to encourage you, if you are listening to this and you don't follow Velvet Ashes, look for every Friday, look for that funny. That is one step you can take into adding some joy and laughter into your life. And interact with Katelyn. If you see something funny, send it her way.
Yes, please. I love
Yes.
it.
Yes. Well, Katelyn, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for all that you do to keep us laughing at Velvet Ashes.
Thank you, guys.
We hope you've enjoyed our discussion today about laughter. It's definitely not something that we talk enough about. And if you are listening to this early in the month, join us all month long on the Velvet Ashes Instagram and social media and over on our membership site, where we're just going to be digging into this topic more. We hope to be laughing with you all month long. And as always, we want to send a thank you to Barnabas International. Thanks for making this conversation happen for us. Thanks for sponsoring this podcast. And we hope to see you back here next month on the Velvet Ashes Legacy Podcast.